The weather was thick that day. We were standing by number 39, as she was called, 1,000 miles east out of New York. Keeping watch of her was particularly... As I was saying, keeping watch of her was my job. I was ice observer on the cutter Mendota. Our ship was carrying out the routine duties of the International Ice Patrol. Locating and reporting icebergs is our main job. One like this, if you don't see it in time, can do plenty of damage. That's how the Titanic was sunk near here one night. 1,500 lives were lost. That's why 12 nations got together in 1914 and established the International Ice Patrol. That's why we were here now. The United States Coast Guard is commissioned to carry out the Ice Patrol duties. But most people have forgotten about the Titanic. Most people don't even know we're anywhere around. They don't know they're headed straight for us and iceberg number 39, exactly 100 miles ahead, bearing down fast, too. But up on the bridge, they know. They know exactly all about us, and we about them. We're in constant radio contact. In fact, we're in touch with 16 ships right now, flying the flags of 9 different nations. But as far as the passengers are concerned, all they know is that ocean travel is safe today. They never give it another thought. Fog's usual off the Grand Banks in spring. Here the warm Gulf Stream from the south nudges the cold Labrador current from the north. Icebergs get caught in these shifting currents. That's what had happened to our number 39. She was right in the spot in the North Atlantic where the heaviest seaborne traffic is. 2,000 individual steamer passages, 1 million people a year. Our berg was a real menace. So our radio warned all ships in the vicinity to change course, give her a wide berth. That's our international job on the Ice Patrol. All this was happening in a dense fog area at the crossroads of the North Atlantic. Our berg was one of those half-dozen a year, maybe, that ever get this far south. Though she seemed like a pretty independent character, she was only a stray from a huge pack. Almost any spring south of Newfoundland, there'll be as many as 400 bergs. The further north you go, the more there are. Our berg was like all the others. They all come down from the north. And like all the other icebergs, her traveling career began 2 years ago in Greenland. This enormous island is covered by 700,000 square miles of ice over a mile in thickness. This ice cap isn't a relic of another age. It's maintaining itself today. And it's not exactly ice either. It's snow that falls and doesn't melt, that gradually gets packed harder and harder. Its own weight forces it slowly downhill toward the sea, taking about 10,000 years to get there. Then this irresistible force meets the irresistible buoyancy of the sea. This is how 10,000 icebergs are calved from glaciers every spring. Sometimes the blocks are 1,000 yards long, 1,000 feet high, and contain 1,000,000 tons of ice. Often they are quite small, growlers we call them. All of them get caught in the West Greenland current that travels north to the Arctic. After freezing in up there for the winter, they drift south in the Labrador current for a summer, only to get frozen in again. The following spring, they are nearing Newfoundland and the Atlantic steamer lanes. By this time, only about 700 have survived the trip. But now they become a menace to navigation. They can't be regulated, they can't be blown up. They have to be found, reported, and avoided. Our air patrol plays an important part in this. When the weather permits, they're constantly on the job. Pilots, radio men, and navigators are searching, reporting, checking positions. Sometimes we spot a vessel in distress, or, if necessary, stand by to aid a transatlantic plane. We all work out of a base in Newfoundland. It's kind of a quiet place, but a lot goes on there. We keep track of all movements, our ships and planes, our icebergs, too. Ice information goes out automatically twice a day. It's free to anyone for the listening, and a lot of people do. There's hardly any commercial radio on the air at this time. The patrol job is not confined to the steamer lanes. A lot of it goes on far up north. We have to know what's happening up there, too. Along the coast of Labrador, plenty of bergs drift down slowly. By keeping track of them, watching how quickly they melt, how fast they drift, we can forecast how many bergs may eventually end up large enough. The Air Patrol searches back and forth in a far-flung pattern. Allowing for a visibility of 10 miles on each side, it can scan 25,000 square miles of ocean in a day. We were up north that day in May, too. That was because summer near the steamer lanes to the south. Weather reporting is another part of our work. A radiosonde is a featherweight automatic radio transmitter. It's attached to a balloon partially filled with helium. When released, the two of them often go up 50,000 feet, sending back continuous data on temperature and barometric readings. We receive this in our weather shack. Then we send it on to the government in Washington, where they put all their daily information on a weather map available to everyone. The bathythermograph does much the same kind of a job underwater. We drop it while we're underway. The information it gathers has no connection with weather forecasting, but has a lot to do with predicting the general movements of icebergs. It's ocean currents that push them around, not the wind. The bathythermograph, the BT as we call it, helps us trace the behavior of ocean currents. Sometimes a change in the floor of the ocean makes them shift, so we keep track of them. A little gadget inside the BT has a needle that makes a continuous record of temperature and depth. A scratch on a piece of smoked glass tells us the story. After he passed us that day in latitude 55 north, Commander Henthorne swung the patrol plane south in accordance with the search pattern. Often there isn't much in the way of scenery, a Newfie fishing vessel or two, but you never know what may turn up. Finding the unexpected is part of our international job, too. They were south of the Grand Banks when it happened. Henthorne saw it first. Big as life, right smack ahead. A berg that must have slipped down through the fog, unseen, unreported. This was serious business. Never mind how she got there, she was there. Something had to be done right away. Position noted, approximate size and description, all pertinent information, and then this radioed back to the base in Newfoundland. Commander Sewell knew this was serious business, too. Commodore Perkins had heard the news. The position radioed from the plane was startling. It really was startling. It put this berg right in position to cross steamer lane B. 100,000 tons of ice. Suppose the fog closed in. They had to get hold of us. We were then still up in latitude 55, near Indintickle, Labrador, taking a BT section. It was about noon that day, and we were below at first mess. A copy of the radio message was brought to me. That's when we got the news. At sea, we don't get too excited about things, except, well, maybe the baseball scores. After all, we get pretty familiar with icebergs. But right then, no more chow for me. It was a good mess that day, too. They told me they wouldn't leave any for me either. My job called me to the bridge. I knew the skipper would be there waiting for me. And he was. The old man, I mean Commander Bowerman, was at the chart table. He was plotting a search pattern in the area where the berg was reported. That's the first step. A berg isn't going to sit still. You have to know your ocean currents. The next step is to set your course, alert the ship, and get going there as fast as you can. That berg was 800 miles away. We were on our way.
Bridge to weather. What did you want in there?
It's always quiet on the bridge of a ship. The watches change, the hours go by. Everything is rigid routine. With both boilers, we'd been doing a steady 18 knots for 40 hours. It was getting dark again, and we were getting close. At 22 hours, I was in CIC. That's a room just after the bridge. I was plotting our course in ETA, estimated time of arrival. We were approaching the upper edge of the Gulf Stream, and the weather might close in any minute. From off the shores of Newfoundland, our course had been straight as an arrow, almost due south by the gyro compass. The Labrador current had helped us a bit. Yes, we were getting close to number 39, as the berg was now labeled. Hank gave me a call from radar across the room. He thought he'd picked up something on the scope. It might have been another ship, of course, but then on the other hand, it might just be... There it was, a beautiful pit. "18 miles southeast through the dark." Was it the berg? About an hour later, we drew alongside. She was a beauty, a dangerous beauty, lurking alone in the steamer lanes. The next day, we got a better look at her. She must have been over 100 feet high, with probably 600 feet below the waterline. All in all, well over 100,000 tons of glacial ice. We cruised around her, and she looked different from every angle. Our job now was to stick around, herding a berg, we call it. In this area of mixed ocean currents, she could drift as much as 15 to 30 miles or more in a day. We had to keep track of her. She really was a beauty, glistening white in the dark blue sea. She showed a number of blue veins a couple of feet thick. That's where the snow had thawed once, and then frozen again into ice. The seagulls found her useful. We kept our base and nearby vessels informed of her movements. The Gulf Stream was pushing her around at a great rate. And, being in the Gulf Stream, we had a chance for some fun. You see, the old man liked swimming himself. There was number 39, only 1,000 yards away. And here we were in water over 60 degrees in temperature. There was even a possibility of sharks. The warm weather was fine for us. But for our berg, it would mean quick melting from now on. In the Gulf Stream, a berg will lose 10 feet of height a day. The sea takes advantage of every opening and crack. That's where they wash away fastest. We had to keep herding her, observing and reporting all changes. There's always plenty of work keeping a ship in shape. It goes on all the time, along with our big job. We were more than just a United States vessel. We were part of an international setup. We were working for 9 nations, each one of which contributed toward our upkeep. 3 days later, the men off duty were watching number 39 melt away, as she was doing pretty fast. But there was a lot of her underwater still. She was still dangerous. Bergs often turn over if they get top-heavy. Sometimes pieces split off. Calving, we call it. Number 39 wasn't spectacular that way, but she sure was a wanderer. Putting messages in bottles is a hobby to some people. With us, it isn't a message. It's our position and the date. It's business. We learn a lot about ocean currents when we find out where and when these bottles are washed up on a beach. You'd hardly know number 39 after 5 days. She traveled 150 zigzag miles, but not a ship had come near because of our warnings. Just hanging around. A trip of maybe several thousand miles, and now reduced to this, a growler. All the brass on the ship turned out in their summer gear to have a last look. Number 39, a pinpoint on the ocean, was becoming harmless. Once a growler is the size of an office desk, then it's no longer a danger to navigation. Our cutter made a wide arc. We were on our way again. Number 39, the Menace, would be gone in a few hours. Well, this job was over, but there were others waiting for us. Most people don't know about the International Ice Patrol. Most people never know we're anywhere around. Today, an ocean trip may be kind of uneventful. A few good parties on board ship, some new friends perhaps, maybe even a storm, seen through a porthole. As far as passengers are concerned, ocean travel is safe today. They never give it another thought, and that's the way it should be.